Satire warning. The following program is gay and contains diversity. The opinions presented by various parties portrayed in this video do not reflect the views of this channel. Any attempts to say otherwise will be met with legal action from my team of Jewish lawyers. Viewer suicide is advised. A pastor's church was bombed after several weeks of protests from LGBTQ plus infinity activists. Who could have done such a thing? Was it Zim? Was it Zer? Or was it Zit? All that and more, here right now at Edgy News. Good evening. I'm your host, Gabe Asher. Fundamentalist Christians and the LGBTQ plus community have been increasingly at odds with each other, especially since the 1960s sexual revolution, when homosexuals began coming out of the closet and into the bathhouses, then out onto the streets. Experts say that homo tyranny has become the law of the land, and free speech is being brutally sodomized by progressive power tops and pernicious pedophile professors.
Boy lovers are so stigmatized that it is difficult to find defenders of their civil liberties, let alone for their erotic orientation. That's in the founding document of queer theory. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm using facts.
Pastor Bruce Mejia of the First Works Baptist Church became the subject of controversy in early January. A local LGBT activist group called Keep Monte Friendly took issue with Pastor Mejia's preaching, which they perceived to be unfriendly.
A stinking, filthy, sodomite faggot. I'm not afraid of these freaks.
The group Keep Monte Friendly's Instagram page appeared in the beginning of January, posting alerts about the homophobic preacher.
The ones who are telling us, you're homophobic. No, you're homophobic. That's why you're letting them into your church. You're homophobic. I'm homo-hating.
In the following weeks, they began protesting outside his church and disrupting Pastor Mejia's Sunday service.
Don't worry, the police are out there.
The mainstream media covered the events of the protest, which further escalated the tension.
At First Works Baptist Church in El Monte, Pastor Bruce Mejia is preaching against people in the LGBTQ community.
So how does God view them? As rapists? How does God view them? As child molesters?
Now, first of all, who is Pastor Mejia? The man who preaches this rhetoric that many people find hateful.
I'm homo-hating.
Or even cartoonish.
That girl on Frozen is a whore. Sorry to crash the party on you about that. She's not a princess, she's a whore.
In the past decades, some independent fundamentalist Baptist churches were known for their fire and brimstone style interpretations of the Bible, as well as their controversial publicity stunts, where they figured out fun, creative new ways to warn people about butt sex.
Oh, wicked land of sodomites.
At the funeral, I decided to break away from the picket and go inside the memorial home to see the mourners firsthand.
Stephen Anderson, pastor of Faithful Word Baptist Church, is a source of inspiration for several other churches in the new independent fundamentalist Baptist movement.
No homos will ever be allowed in this church as long as I'm the pastor here. Never!
Pastor Stephen Anderson has been banned from YouTube.
Maybe the fact that California is going up in flames right now, maybe God can just go like and torch old YouTube's headquarters.
As well as almost every English-speaking country in the world.
In one single day, I was banned from 26 countries. So now I'm up to 31 countries that have banned me.
He has made headline news many times for his controversial speech.
This book doesn't talk about his sexual orientation. It talks about sodomites, filthy, dogs, vile, brood, beast, damnation, and hell. That's what it talks about, you fat.
And has even invented an innovative new mnemonic method to remember the acronym LGBTQ.
In a sermon, you also said that LGBTQ stands for Let God Burn Them Quickly.
Right. It's actually helpful to help you remember it because, you know, sometimes you get mixed up. Is it GLBT, LGBT? But if you remember is let God burn them, you'll get it right every time.
The Southern Poverty Law Center labeled Pastor Anderson as an extremist and his church a hate group, as well as several other churches and pastors named in the greater movement, including Pastor Mejia, after participating in the infamous Make America Straight Again rally on the anniversary of the Orlando nightclub shooting.
We will make America
put them to death.
You f***ing! You're wicked!
Pastor Mejia's First Work Baptist Church has been operating since 2017 in El Monte, a predominantly Hispanic city in Los Angeles.
Were you trying to get crazy with this thing? Don't you know I'm loco?
I love you, God! Damn, I'm true! Jesus The local activist group Keep Out Monte Friendly eventually descended upon Pastor Mejia publicly early this January, citing the SPLC's designation of Pastor Mejia's church as a hate group. War was declared.
War. Today I want to prepare you for war.
If you're an American, you're called to die for the gay disco.
On January 17th, LGBTQ protesters stormed outside the front entrance of First Works Baptist Church during Pastor Mejia's Sunday service. Fox 11 Los Angeles News covered the events on behalf of the mainstream media.
Let me tell you about some on the news media today.
They claim to have reached out to Pastor Mejia for comment.
Of course, we have reached out to the pastor for comment, but he has not gotten back to us.
The lie detector test determined that was a lie.
Despite being denied a platform to speak on the mainstream media, on his own social media, he gave what appeared to be an apology. The following Saturday night, Pastor Mejia's church was the target of a bomb attack.
Oh yeah, they blew that shit up, bro. I don't know, they threw like a bomb or some shit, bro. It was blowed up. Bro, that shit, the whole fucking earth shake, bro. This is crazy. Bro, what the fuck?
The police and FBI began investigating the graffiti vandalism and bomb blast to Pastor Mejia's church. The authorities said that they had no reason to believe that the bombing was perpetrated by anyone associated with the LGBTQ plus 72G group, Keep Out Monte Friendly. The activist group claimed to have nothing to do with the bomb blast, with some people speculating that it may have been one of the vatos in Pastor Mejia's church.
Were you trying to get crazy with this thing? Don't you know I'm loco?
Pastor Mejia was not convinced of their innocence.
I got bombed because I have anti-LGBTQ views, but yeah, you still want to say that it's not the LGBTQ who's responsible for this. Well, who is?
He continued railing against them during his sermon the next morning at an undisclosed location, despite the bombing incident at his church.
By the way, it's exciting too. Amen. Let's just be honest, this is exciting. You know, everyone thinks we're like, oh man. I mean, we're just kind of like, man, this is kind of cool. You don't want to live a boring life. Amen. Right. We want buildings to blow up. We want us to be threatened. We want all that stuff because there's only one life to live. Amen. Yeah, exactly. There's only one life to live, folks. Might as well go out in a blaze of glory. Because there's only one life to live.
This whole debacle encapsulates an ongoing debate on free speech absolutism versus the use of sanctions against so-called hate speech. First Works Baptist Church has not broken any laws with incitement to violence, yet the media and establishment acted in lockstep towards supposing the eventual censorship of Pastor Mejia and his congregation. Now let's talk to our resident expert, Dr. Christian Whiteman, about the merits of free speech. Thank you, Gay Basher. You're right. Freedom of speech is not only one of the main pillars of modern progress, freedom of speech is also the freedom to hate as you please. The First Amendment was designed to protect unpopular and offensive speech, specifically. This is one of the most important tools in protecting people from the tyranny of the minority, majority, or authority. But doesn't hate speech targeting the LGBTQ plus you and me community create an unsafe environment where it could lead them to being the victim of violent hate crimes? It is possible. It's also possible that those crimes could have been influenced by the disproportionate percentage of homosexuals that have engaged in pedophilia compared to the heterosexual population.
Oh my word. Lord Jesus, save me. Kumbaya, my Lord.
The point is, prescribing legal culpability to those who have only expressed unpopular speech but have not committed a crime like direct incitement to violence is like making someone an accessory to a crime because they supposedly have similar thoughts to the criminal, based on an arbitrary judgment by a tyrannical state. But freedom of speech does not mean freedom from consequences. That's right. Anyone who doesn't like someone's speech can choose not to associate with them and also speak out against them. Freedom to give consequences does not extend to harassing, vandalizing, and terrorizing people that you disagree with. And big tech, with monopolies on social media and payment processors, being lobbied by partisan hacks to suppress freedom of speech is also a consequence that no free society should tolerate. Today, it may be someone you find distasteful.
I'm homo-hating.
But tomorrow, they could cut out your power for daring to question the powers that be. Interesting. Could you elaborate on what you mean by the powers that be? Certainly. Let me give you a quote to help explain. This is a quote that is often misattributed to the French Enlightenment philosopher Voltaire, but it actually comes from a prominent neo-Nazi pedophile. Regardless of its origins, it's a damn good quote. To learn who rules over you, simply find out who you are not allowed to criticize.
And who are we not allowed to criticize?
Oh, and it looks like the powers that be just cut out the power for tonight's guest, Dr. Christian Whiteman. Thank you for tuning in to Edgy News, and we'll see you next time.
You're not going to get paid a decent wage anymore. That's gone. The family wage is gone. So you better just get used to being a homosexual. All you can expect now is admission to the gay disco. That's your new freedom, okay? You can go to the men's room in the gay disco and have sex with 10 guys a night, and that's the new definition of freedom.